Welcome and thank you for tuning in. You are watching the first of our Franciscan climate talks. Over the next 4 weeks, we'll try to provide you with regular updates about what's happening during the UN Climate Conference in Azerbaijan. During these conversations, you'll hear from Franciscans and our team that's currently in Baku, but you'll also hear from some of our partners representing different faith-based and civil society organizations. On 14 November, we'll also host a live conversation where you'll be able to ask your questions directly to our team in Baku. You can find a link to register in the description below this video. Today, I'm joined by Budi and Igor. Budi has been with Franciscans International since 2011, first as our Asia Pacific coordinator and now as our International Advocacy Director. He's been closely following the UN climate negotiations for years, and this will be his fifth time he attends a COP in person. Igor is a young Franciscan from Brazil, and in Baku he's part of the delegation sent by the Laudato Si campaign, formerly the Catholic Climate Movement. He's already been to 4 previous COPs, so we're in good company. My name is Thomas, and I'm calling in from Geneva. Budi and Igor, thank you both for joining me. Budi, let's start with you. Can you tell us a little bit about the climate conferences and why do we have one of these COPs every year?
So the climate conferences, or what normally we call as COP, is the annual meeting of the UNFCCC, that is the United Nations Framework on Climate Conferences. So this is a kind of meeting of all state parties that has ratified the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And it happens every year. Last year, it happened in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. And this year, it happens in Baku in Azerbaijan. And this is the 29th COP. So the UNFCCC is the UN body that addresses the issue of climate change. So the main objective really is to scale up the ambition so that as the international community, we can address the climate change together. Of course, the main objective is to make sure that the temperature is not going to go up to 2 degrees after the revolutionary pre-industrial period. And since 2015, we are trying to scale up into no more than 1.5 degrees by the end of the century.
So I think most people will have heard about the Paris Agreement, but can you just talk a little bit more about what it is and how these are connected to the COPs you're at?
So Paris Agreement was very historical, isn't it, Igor? So I think you were in Paris at that time. We were also in Paris. And as Franciscan family, we were really campaigning together for this Paris Agreement. So one of the key issues that two key issues that we achieved in Paris Agreement, the first is to have a convention that is legally binding for all member states of the UNFCCC to ensure that the climate, the temperature will not raise to up to 2 degrees by the end of the century, and try to make the highest ambition so that it can be kept into 1.5 degree. And the second very important thing is on the NDCs, that is called as the National Determined Contributions, in which all member states have to write down on their climate ambitions to make sure that their climate ambitions, when they are put together with the climate ambitions coming from climate commitments coming from other countries, all will help to reduce the increase of the temperature of our planet. Maybe you can also share your experience when you were in Paris, Igor.
Yeah, in fact, I think that was the first time we met, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So as LSM, in that time, we were called the Global Catholic Climate Movement. So that was the first experience of the movement. In fact, that was the year that the movement was launched in Asia Pacific. And then the first experience was to try to, of course, to support the Paris Agreement and make sure that the states could follow. Also, of course, sign the agreement, but also follow the agreements there. So that was the first experience of the LSM, and that's interesting to see the dynamics, like
Exactly,
from 2015 to now, how things just come out up and down.
Up and down,
Yeah.
sure, yeah.
But
yeah.
that's why it's important.
It is very important. And remember as well that we had big mobilizations of the Franciscans at that time, the big delegation of Franciscans, because of course, 2015 from the UN perspective is important for the Paris Agreement, but it was also the year when Laudato Si encyclic was launched by Pope Francis. And now, as for us, Franciscan International, we try to follow the path of the Laudato Si as a Franciscan organizations, but at the same time, we have the obligation as well, or the duty as human rights NGOs at the UN to ensure that the climate actions and also the commitments of all member states of the UN should include human rights in their climate actions. So this is one of the duty that we are trying to ensure, including this year, because this year is going to be very important on some key issues, such as on the issue of climate finance, phasing out from the fossil fuel, as well as on the issue of the loss and damage.
So would it be fair to say that the Paris Agreement was historical, but it wasn't an endpoint, that implementing it still requires a lot of work and negotiation?
Yes, you're right, Thomas, because that was an agreement that has several articles that then needs to be worked out further, because within the agreement itself, it contains several elements, issues. For example, on the issue of the climate finance that was decided in Paris was only about the so-called the principal agreement, yet it has to be translated into something that can be operationalized. Just to give you a little bit of example, the issue of loss and damage was mentioned in the Paris Agreement, but at that time there was no discussions regarding loss and damage fund. The loss and damage.
What are loss and damage?
Okay, loss and damage is also something that is very important for us all to see, because loss and damage is one of the three pillars of the discussions within UNFCCC and also within the Paris Agreement, apart from the adaptations and mitigations. Loss and damage means the losses and damages caused by climate change. These include the slow onset losses and damages caused by climate change that has been taking place in the last few decades. But the losses and damages can also be caused by the current situations, like as you know, that there are so many extreme climate events that are taking place in different parts of the world. I think in almost each country, in different scale, we experience different sudden climate events that can cause either landslide, that can cause also, for example, the unusual heavy rain, and then the flood, etc. So these losses and damages that can be related to the climate change, it has to be addressed in a way that the losses and damages can be compensated by the international community.
And this wasn't finalized in the Paris Agreement?
And it was not finalized by the Paris Agreement. The fund for responding to loss and damage was only concluded last year during the COP28 in Dubai. And this year, we will discuss it a bit further, just to understand on how to operationalize, how to make this loss and damage fund being operational, so that people can have the access, the community can have the access. But also one of the key issues is that the fund for this loss and damage so far is only voluntarily. So it's not mandatory for the states. And so far, from billions of dollars needed, the pledges or the commitment given by the state as of this September is only 700 million. So it is not enough to really address the losses and damages experienced mostly by countries that contribute less in terms of climate change.
So for someone who's never been to a COP before, how should I imagine it? Will you just be in one big room? You're in your hotel now, but where will you go tomorrow?
So yeah, this is very interesting because the process is a bit complex in a sense that there will be different meetings that will take place at the same time because within the UNFCCC, there are several negotiations and discussions. Negotiations on the climate finance will take place in one place in which states will be represented, civil society and other stakeholders. There will be negotiations regarding loss and damage. There will be other negotiations regarding, for example, the carbon market, and so on and so forth. So within the UNFCCC, there are different subjects and issues being negotiated. So there are smaller negotiations in which they need to come to certain agreement so that those issues can be implemented. At the same time, several side events that you just mentioned will also take place. These side events are, let's say, the conferences, smaller conferences, exchange of opinions between different actors, the civil society, the UN officers, indigenous people, including states. States can also organize a side event by showing their commitment. At the same time, there will also be some pavilion organized by different groups. Pavilion is a kind of a place in which we can see some expositions on normally the best practice. It can be pavilion coming from Brazil, for example. Surely there will be a Brazilian pavilion in which the Brazilian government is showing on how they are committed in addressing climate change. But at the same time, there are also pavilion, for example, coming from the faith communities that we call as the faith pavilion, in which there will be discussions, will be exchange on how the faith communities contribute, and there will be, I think, hundreds of pavilions showing on how the different actors can contribute in addressing climate change. At the same time, there will be around 50,000 people attending that. So it's also a kind of a marketplace in which people can have the interactions. So we will meet different people and we can have discussions on different issues or common agenda with people coming from different backgrounds or different groups. So it's a bit like a big gathering with various meetings. So we need to navigate and to see how can we be part of the discussions meaningfully, or how we can learn from others meaningfully.
So and all of this is happening in Baku, which is the capital of a big fossil fuel producing country?
So this COP is very interesting indeed. After the three last COPs, or this is the third COP that is organized by a country in which they produce oil and gas. And therefore, the issue of phase out from the fossil fuel is very important. So this is one of the key issues that is being negotiated. Apart from the civil society, I think one of the biggest part of this of the participants or delegates will be from civil society, but several states or almost all states will send their delegations to participate and negotiate with each other. And apart from the civil society and also the delegates representing the country, we have to remember as well that there are also some other sectors, including the private sector. Private sector has been participating very actively in different COP for their own interest. For example, there are also representatives coming from the fossil fuel industry, from the oil company, from the gas company, and from other companies in which they think that the decisions will affect them. So therefore, it's very dynamic in a sense that there are different parties trying to negotiate and trying to push the common agenda. And us as the civil society, as you mentioned, Igor, I think it's very important for us to really push so that the interest of the civil society, the interest of the people will be taken into account or will be at the center of the discussions.
So if you're saying it's a marketplace, it sounds like you'll be representing the Franciscans idea in that town square. Igor will be there to represent the Laudato Si campaign. So Igor, I wanted to ask you a little bit about that. Because you flew in from Brazil, so I'm assuming you're still very much jet lagged at the moment.
A little bit.
Okay. What is the Laudato Si campaign? Why is it important to be in a space like this? And how will you participate?
Yeah, so as the Laudato Si movement, we had some, in the secretariat, had some good discussions on how to participate, the ways that we could participate at this COP, and then making sure we participate in the best way that can support all the work that other organizations and other Catholic organizations are doing. And then we realized that it would be important to have someone from Brazil, someone from the country that is going to host the next COP. I'm not saying that we have some COPs that are more important than others, but there are some expectations on COP30. Not just because it's happening in Brazil, but because it's also the 10th anniversary of the Paris Agreement. That's also a time to review the Paris Agreement, if I'm not wrong.
Yes.
Budi is the expert here, but
We are learning.
So that's why there are some great expectations around COP30. So for this reason, I came from the Latin America, which is 7 hours of the difference and some long flights. Unfortunately, some emissions as well.
Exactly.
But we understood that it would be important to do this connection and to have someone from the South Globe, someone from Brazil, also being here in COP29. Thinking of the Catholic or our church perspective, it's also a great moment in 2025 because we will be celebrating the 10th anniversary as well of Laudato Si. For the Franciscan family, 800 years of the Canticle of the Creatures,
yes,
which is like the inspiration of the encyclical Laudato Si. And specifically in Brazil, the Brazilian Bishops' Conference is leading the Fraternity Campaign, which is the biggest Catholic campaign in Brazil. And I would say, maybe some Franciscans can help me, that's the biggest Catholic campaign, numerically talking about, maybe, because it's a campaign from the 60s. Mm-hmm. And then each year they address a different theme. And next year will be about integral ecology. Mm-hmm. So that's why we also have huge expectations in the Catholic perspective. And as we know, Pope Francis is leading the way. So not just when he launched the encyclical Laudato Si, but then organizing a synod of the Amazon. That was the first synod about a biome or about a region. Mm-hmm. Also an interesting approach because Pope Francis invited the global Catholic Church to discuss about a specific region. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful, at least on my perspective. And also last year, Pope Francis launched the I don't know in English.
Exhortation.
Yeah,
I think it's exhortation. Yeah.
Laudate Deo, more specific on climate issues. I would say that document wasn't for Catholics. I mean, not just for Catholics, mm-hmm. but the language. We see that different language between Laudate Deo and Laudato Si. It was more maybe technical words, maybe a technical approach. So I think Pope Francis knows some people that should read as well the document, not just like Catholic people. And for this reason, I believe that it's important to be here, to keep to follow the discussions, the side events, to do some connections with some other organizations, and also making sure that we understand COPs as processes, not just events each year.
Yeah.
So these COPs really are just really an ongoing thing.
So COP is not work that is individual or in silo, but COP is a continuum from 2015 when we adopted the Paris Agreement until now, COP29. So every COP, we need to work on certain technicality issues that has to be addressed and discussed together. And sometimes we can finish, sometimes we can't. And then we need to continue to the next COP. And also to make sure that all the COPs, the main objectives is to raise the ambition so that we can address the climate crisis together in a concrete way. Because otherwise, if we look only from the individual COP, and then we cannot see the progress. So we need to see the progress every year. And as a civil society, as people, we need to make sure that the progress is real and all the commitments are translated into concrete actions, that by the end of the day, the people should feel that there is an improvement of the situations in terms of negative impacts of climate change. So therefore, we think that it is very important for us to be present in most of the COP so that we can represent people.
Before, you both mentioned that these climate conferences had their ups and their downs over the years. For the one in Azerbaijan, would you say we're in an up or are we in a down?
So maybe we can provide different views. I'm going to talk regarding the loss and damage. I think in terms of loss and damage, we can see that there is a small progress. It's a progress in any case, knowing that loss and damage is now part of the discussions within COP. And then there is already fund being established by the UNFCCC for loss and damage. However, it's still very small fund. It is voluntarily. We need to scale up as much as possible so that we can address the negative impact of climate change that are felt by the poor countries, those who do not contribute negatively to climate change, but they are victims, direct victims. So that is one of the achievement of COP. So we have certain hope on that. However, another issue that we think it's really a bit down, at least from my side, the fact that the climate finance is not enough, despite the agreements, discussions from different mechanisms, but there is not enough finance to address the climate change. And I think this is also because, in my view, that we tried not to address the root causes of climate change, because the root causes of climate change include the fact that we keep using the fossil fuel, and then our lifestyle has not changed. The economic model has not changed. So we still use the same profit-oriented economic model. So there is a little bit of disappointment from my side to see that we try collectively to address only the symptoms, but we don't address the root causes. I think it's very important for us to remind ourselves that in order to be effectively addressing the climate change, we need to also address the root causes that we are having now. So that's my view. What do you think, Igor?
Yeah, maybe just also sharing a view, a personal view. I would say that we are so far from the ambitions that we should be to address climate change. So it's clear when we see the impacts. So, for example, for people in Europe, the recent floods in Spain, and then the fires in Portugal as well happening at the same time. The fires in Latin America, in the Amazon, Brazil, also in Peru. I don't know, I think a month ago, there was a Catholic event in Quito, and a bishop from Brazil said that the smoke of the fires in the Amazon was in
Quito.
In Quito. And that's a huge, I mean, also this year, in the beginning of the year, in south of Brazil, the floods in Porto Alegre, in Rio Grande do Sul, as well. I mean, the storm in the US, and then all other impacts all over the world, just shows the emergency that we are facing. And on my perspective, we are so far from what we should do to address climate change. I think there's always a combination or a balance between being realistic, but at the same time having the hope that we can do something and we can change the way that we are moving as society and as all the problems and the crises that we are facing. And then for me, that's the point. More specifically on technical issues, I think right now, I think the countries are also sharing the new NDCs.
Yes.
And Brazilian government just launched the new NDC.
Okay.
I think yesterday or today. I don't know
That's
exactly.
very interesting. I will have a look at that.
Yeah. And that's not that ambitious as well. So we expect more from the Brazilian government. We really expect that Brazil could lead the action.
The examples.
Yeah, could be examples. And I would say on deforestation, because the emissions from deforestations and the goals to stop deforestation in Brazil is a good example, but it's not enough. We need also to be more ambitious in other areas like the fossil fuels and new exploitation, new projects of oil and so on. Yeah, that's a little bit my my overview and my opinion, my personal opinion.
Well, it looks like you have your work cut out for you. Thank you for your time, and I'll let you catch up on some sleep before tomorrow. To all of you, thank you for watching. Don't forget that you can ask your questions live to Igor, Budi, and a few other guests on 14 November, and that you can register in the link below. If you can't make it, keep an eye on our YouTube channel for these Franciscan climate talks. Thank you, and we hope to see you again.
Goodbye. Thank you, everyone.